So when you hear the words end times prophecy, what comes to mind? Is it, doomsday preppers, sensational headlines, people on street corners with signs? It's easy to get caught up in all that. But what if the Bible's biggest, most urgent warning for the last days has nothing to do with global catastrophes? What if the real threat is something way more subtle? A danger that isn't out there somewhere, but right here, inside our own hearts and even our churches. That's what we're going to dig into today, the Great Deception. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the whole history of prophecy hysteria. Why so many people have gotten it wrong. Then we'll dive into what the Bible really warns about, this idea of a great deception. We'll talk about something called apostasy, this falling away from the faith. And yeah, we'll get into those wolves in sheep's clothing. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. We'll wrap up with a practical call for discernment and leave you with one big question to think about.
Okay, first up, a history of hysteria. Before we can even begin to hear the truth, we got to cut through all the noise, right? For way too long, the whole idea of studying prophecy has been, it's been hijacked by sensationalism. It's turned into this circus of failed predictions and fear, when it was always meant to be about hope and a serious warning.
Just take a look at this. It's like a graveyard of failed predictions, isn't it? Year 2000. Remember the panic? Then there was the whole Mayan calendar thing in 2012, the blood moons. Every single time we were told this is it, and nothing. And this isn't just embarrassing. It's actually really dangerous. It leads to this kind of spiritual burnout where people just become numb to the real warnings that God is trying to give us.
I love this quote from Dr. David Reagan. He calls it the National Enquirer branch of theology. Ouch. But he's got a point, right? When studying prophecy turns into a tabloid headline, it just loses all its power. It actually pushes people away from the truth. So that leads us to the real question, the one we're here to answer. If the Bible isn't just some cosmic calendar for predicting dates, then what is its true prophetic warning?
And that brings us to our second point, the Great Deception. See, this is the big shift. The Bible's main focus isn't really on the when, but on the what. It's trying to get us to look away from the headlines and look into our own hearts. It reveals that the biggest danger in the last days isn't some huge cataclysmic event. It's a catastrophic deception.
There's this Greek word, planao, that just nails this idea. It doesn't just mean to make a mistake. No, it means to be caused to stray, to be deliberately led away from the truth. Think of it like a spiritual seduction. And the Bible is crystal clear on this. This is Satan's #1 weapon in the final chapter of history.
Listen to what Jesus himself says here in Matthew 24. He warns that false messiahs and prophets are going to show up and perform great signs and wonders. Why? To deceive, if possible, even the elect. Think about that. This deception will be so powerful, so convincing, it could trip up even the most committed believers. This isn't a battle of wits, folks. This is a battle for our very souls.
And it's not just Jesus. The Apostle Paul doubles down on this warning in 2 Thessalonians. He reveals the supernatural power that's fueling all this. We're not just talking about clever lies here. This is a demonic strategy, backed by all power and false signs and wonders. And who is it aimed at? It's aimed at those who have already decided to reject the truth.
But here's the part that really gets me. This is the truly terrifying part. This deception, it's not really aimed at people outside the church. It's like a Trojan horse, designed to get inside the walls. The Bible flat out warns that in later times, some will abandon the faith. They'll literally walk away to follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. And this great exit from the truth, it has a specific name. It's called apostasy.
Which brings us to section 3, the warning of apostasy. That's a word that should really send a shiver down your spine if you're a believer, because the Bible doesn't talk about this like it's some remote what if. It's presented as a guaranteed sign of the end times, a massive falling away from the faith that starts from inside the church.
Paul could not be any clearer about this. He's writing to the church in Thessalonica and he says, "Hey, let no one deceive you. That day will not come unless the falling away comes first." So it's not just another sign on a checklist, it's a prerequisite. This has to happen before the end.
So what exactly is apostasy? Well, the Greek word is apostasia. It means a departure, a defection. This isn't about someone just having doubts or quietly drifting away. We're talking about a public, defiant rejection of the absolute core truths of Christianity. It's the pastor who says the resurrection is just a metaphor. It's the influencer who says all paths lead to God. It's the professor who teaches that the Bible is just a collection of myths.
And the Bible actually gives us a sort of field guide to spot this happening. It says people just won't put up with sound doctrine anymore. They'll start looking for teachers who tell them what their itching ears want to hear. Feel-good messages that are all about them. They'll turn away from the truth and get sidetracked by myths. It's having a form of godliness. It looks religious on the outside, but it completely denies the real power of the gospel.
Now, this falling away doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's orchestrated. There are agents of deception at work. And the Bible gives us a chillingly accurate description of who to look out for, which leads us to our next point, wolves in sheep's clothing.
Jesus himself gives this warning. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. This isn't some bedtime story, guys. It's a direct, serious warning. The biggest threat to the church, to the flock, comes from people who look and sound just like one of us, but on the inside, they're out to destroy.
Just look at this contrast here. It's the two faces of a false teacher. Outwardly, they look great. They're in sheep's clothing. Maybe they call themselves ministers of Christ. They're doing wonderful works. They use smooth, flattering words that make you feel good. But inwardly, they're ravenous wolves. The Bible calls them false brethren, workers of iniquity, slaves to their own appetites. They are masters of disguise, and their target is the people of God.
And the most dangerous false gospels aren't the ones that are just totally out there. The most dangerous ones are subtle. They're the ones that just slightly twist the gospel of grace. As it says in Galatians, it's another gospel. It's often a works-based message, right? It adds a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Jesus plus your good works equals salvation. It takes the freedom of the gospel and turns it right back into a system of religious bondage. Okay, so with all this cunning and powerful deception out there, how in the world are we supposed to stand firm? Well, the good news is, the Bible does not leave us defenseless. Not at all. It gives us what I like to call a spiritual superpower. And that superpower is discernment.
So how do we guard against this? 1 John tells us to test the spirits. This isn't passive. It's an active, spiritual discipline. It boils down to 3 key things. 1, hold fast to biblical truth. You got to know the real thing to spot a fake. 2, test all teachings against Scripture. Be like the Bereans in the book of Acts who checked everything against the Word. And 3, focus on character, not calendars. Seriously, what a teacher lives like is way more important than what date they've circled on a calendar. This quote from Pastor John Miller just sums it all up perfectly. The purpose of Bible prophecy is not for us to make a calendar, but to build character. Wow, let that sink in. It's not about satisfying our curiosity about the future. It's about changing us right now. It's a call to live a holy life, getting ourselves ready for the return of our King. All right, so as we start to wrap this up, the picture should be getting pretty clear. The ultimate danger in the last days, it's not a rogue asteroid, it's not a virus, it's not a world war. The number one threat is a lie. A lie that is so subtle, so seductive, that it's designed to capture our hearts and lead us astray. Yeah, all that speculation about dates and headlines, we've seen the damage it does. It's just a distraction, plain and simple. Instead, the Bible's prophetic warnings are a call to ground ourselves in the truth. They're a call to guard our hearts against the real danger, which is deception from within. They're not meant to scare us. They are meant to prepare us.
So this is the ultimate question I want to leave you with. It's not, are you trying to figure out the date on a calendar? It's this, are you seeking the sensational or are you grounded in the truth? Because your answer to that question really matters. The choice, as always, is yours.